Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be talking about days 2 and 3 of the 27-day reading challenge of The Unfair Advantage, written by Ashley and Hasan Kubba. Like you know, this book is about discovering your hidden talents and how you already have what it takes to live and lead a successful life. So quickly, what we will do is it will take a quick recap of part 1, which are the allotted pages for days 2 and 3. Part 1 called Understand. We will go through chapters 1 and 2 quickly. Then we would take some few quotes here and there, the question of the day, and then it will be over and out. Let's get started. Yes. So 1 says life is unfair. Really, is life unfair? Well, maybe. Yeah, I can agree to that. Life is unfair. So chapter 1 narrates the story of Evan Spiegel, who is the co-founder of Snapchat. I'm sure we all know that already. And according to Forbes, Spiegel was the world's youngest self-made billionaire before Kylie Jenner. Born in 1990, he reached $1 billion at age 24. And this is Evan saying, I got really lucky and life isn't fair. If you have gone through this chapter, you will know that Evan Spiegel grew up in a multi-million-dollar household in Los Angeles. And the book goes on and on to tell us about the life of privilege that Evan Spiegel lived. In fact, his father was a renowned lawyer who handled huge cases, big cases. He was actually born into a great family that afforded him the best life possible. He went to the best schools, had the best connections. Through his father's network, he was able to, get great mentors who even contributed to the very first fundings of Snapchat. So he had all the resources, right? And if you look at some of the highlights I made here, right here, you see the third highlight on this page right now says, this is what we are looking at when we talk about unfair advantages. We're talking about the very things that surrounded Evan Spiegel, the life of greatness, given to him by his parents, the right education, the right connections, network, the resources that he had, Going on, the next highlighted part of this page says, he was able to climb the ladder at such a young age because he had been largely set up to do so. In fact, he didn't climb the ladder. He went up in a rocket ship. Of course, I can relate to this. And on the very next page, you can see the blue highlighted part there says, the fact is that as Evan recognized, the world is not fair and it's more unfair for some than others. He was brought up very rich, extremely very well educated, with very successful parents and social connections. But what if you didn't grow up with any of these advantages? Yeah, that's why life is not fair, really. Because there are people who didn't work for all of these things. They were just privileged to be born into these great families, that gave them the right education, the right connections and everything. And you are expected to compete with these people. Probably you were born into an average family or even a very poor family, like the stories of Ashley and Hasan Kubba. So is life really fair? Of course it's unfair. If you check the highlighted parts closer to the end of the page, you see it says, and yet in every corner of the web and within the self-help and business section of every bookshop, you hear the same story. Hard work is what makes the difference. Hustlers are the ones who make it. When you want to succeed as badly as you want to breathe, that's when you become successful, as if it is as easy as that, really. And of course, an entire industry seems to have grown up around this hard work worship. Of course, the self-help industry. Work hard, be persistent, be committed, and you'll be successful, And it goes on and on about the oversimplification of hard work equals success. You know that if you work hard, you're going to be successful. All you need to do is work hard. Katrina Fake make the statement, I've seen a lot of hard-working entrepreneurs fail, and I've come to the conclusion that working hard, while never a bad thing, is not really the magic thing that leads to great inventions or successful outcomes. That's what she says. That's the co-founder of Flickr, Katrina. In her words, she says, working hard is overrated. You're just working hard. It's not like you're working smart. It's not like you're specific about what you're working hard at. Maybe your working hard formulation is that you just wake up in the morning, you wake up very early in the morning at 4 a.m., you get to work, you keep pushing. You know, there is no particular system around whatever you're doing. And that is what we've been told based on the case of Evan Spiegel, who at the end of the day mentioned in the next pages that it is not just about working hard. It's about working the system. It's about working the system. And I think it's on this page where we have this oversimplification of hard work equals success. It's not only misleading. It can be downright confusing when you don't know what to work hard on exactly. Remember what Evan Spiegel said. It's not about working harder. It's about working the system. Working hard without working smart is useless. Of course, definitely. For example, you can work incredibly hard designing and building a product, but it's a product. But if it's a product that nobody wants to pluck, you will get nowhere. That's if you're not growing by exposure to customers, to audience. You know, if your product isn't what people want, if your product doesn't have enough exposure to people that are potential audience, potential buyers, you know, potential users, potential consumers, then you're getting nowhere. So there should be a logic around working the system. But what does this really mean? I guess we'll get to that shortly. And this chapter actually ends on the note of Reid Hoffman, who was asked a question. And the question says, how much of what you accomplished is because of your hard work and your intelligence? And how much of it is because of the luck and the privileges that you've had? Without a breath of hesitation, he answered. The answer is massively both. Of course, you can't take away being hardworking, working smart, really, and the privileges that we're afforded by life situations, by our education, by our talent, our inherent skills, by our friends, by the connections we made, by just running into someone someday and exchanging contact. We can't overemphasize the part of luck, of privileges, of opportunities in actually making it in life, really. So we move quickly to chapter 2, which is the entrepreneurial journeys of Ash Ali and Hasan Kubba. So Ash Ali goes on to tell us a story of how he grew up in this very humble background. You know, according to him, I think the first statement here caught my attention. It says, my parents used to ask me, Ash, why is it that when everyone's working one way, you're working the opposite? That was me. Actually goes on to tell us his life story. How his parents weren't really wealthy, you know, but they tried to give him and his siblings a life that they could be proud of, at least to get to college and make something out of their lives. But he says, how did I repay them? By dropping out of college twice. He dropped out. And he says in his words, not in the cool Mark Zuckerberg kind of way either. You know, he was much younger. It was not even in an advanced level. He was 17 and was already out of school. You can imagine that. And what was he doing? He tried a couple of things. I think right from a young age, he's always had the entrepreneurial insight. Because at that young age, he started selling CDs and he was making money until he discovered that they were pirated and it wasn't cool. It wasn't right. that he sold them in the first place. Next, he started doing some other things, and eventually he came across the sense of actually creating a web-based business. He created a web-based business in the days of dial-up internet. He was lucky enough that he had a friend whose parents were selling shoes, so they had shoe business. And what did he do? He created a web page and was uploading pictures of these shoes, to the web. He was actually using the web, an online platform, to sell the shoes, and he was doing so well. In fact, he mentioned that on his 19th birthday, his siblings actually wrote a card for him and said, in their words, future.com millionaire. It was as if they were laughing at him. They were saying, oh, you're stressing yourself, guy. What is wrong with you? What are you doing? But that was an encouragement for him. He said he even hung it somewhere. He could see it every morning while he was working, because it became his motivation, even though people didn't know, his siblings didn't know that. To cut the long story short, he went ahead to get nominated for an internet-based award, and subsequently was taken out of his country, to the UK. And he, at the age of 19, was telling adults what to do. He was telling them basically what to do, And at some point, in his words, he says, I was very suddenly introduced to two new phenomena: office politics and imposter syndrome. Of course, office politics, we all know that. And imposter syndrome, we know that too. We often feel we are not good enough. We feel we're not so good at what we are doing, and we shouldn't be leading whatever we are leading. We should just back off. We should stay off. I'm not sure I'm good enough. I'm not sure I'm qualified enough to do this thing, to take on this job, to take on this career path. And he felt that, even though at that point he didn't know that was what it, meant. But right now he understands better, according to him. At the long run, there was a bubble burst, and the whole internet thing came crashing. And he had to return back home, dejected, feeling so bad. He said in his words, I was made redundant. My illusions that I had made it quickly evaporated, along with the little savings that he had, because he was paid well and was living big, and now back to square one, because basically that's what it meant. So he went back home. I'm sure now the imposter syndrome will even sink in better to say, oh, of course, I've always known I'm not that good. So now, okay, everything is cleared. I've now come back to my senses. I'm not as good as I thought I am, as people, think I am. So the next thing that happened blew my mind. He said to himself, actually, the reason I got this job in the first place wasn't just that I was good at it. It was because I had got coverage by the Internet Awards nomination. I would never have even thought of applying for a job in London had they not reached out to me themselves. Part of why I had this job was just dumb luck. So he acknowledged the fact that, yeah, I was privileged to be here, And I think to a great extent, he accepts this as his unfair advantage. People of his age who were even doing things like that didn't get that same opportunity. But he got lucky because he was nominated for an internet-based award, which gave him exposure, the right exposure at the right time. He was ready. He was already working on this. He was developing himself, and he knows his onions, And now he's saying that instead of feeling beaten and all, he should be grateful, recognizing his unfair advantages and how it has helped him and how it can help him even more. Because honestly, everything works together for him. He's gone ahead to analyze that. For instance, even when he started the internet thing, If he didn't have a friend whose parents owned a shoe business, he wouldn't have gotten to where he got to. So why not acknowledge your unfair advantages? Those advantages you have over other people, acknowledge them and be grateful for them. And of course, harness them towards your own success. So according to him, he says, and so it dawned on me, the skill set had built my expertise was my own powerful unfair advantage. Awesome. Of course, he went ahead in life to do many other things, among which he got married, he had kids, and he was working in this big company where he was being paid well. And one day he said, you know what, I'm leaving this place to start an online takeaway website, online food website where people can order food and all that. And people actually thought, okay, are you okay? Do you think this is what you need right now? And all of that. But you went ahead. You've read this. If you've seen this, if you have not, I would encourage you that you read it so you don't spend so much time rereading this all over again. He went ahead and became successful. And he left this for something else and even became more successful. Made money, got the exposure he needed, moved from one startup to another and made it. As you can see on the screen, these highlights. I moved on from Just Eat after 3 years there, and just a few years after that we had the IPO. He did a lot of things. He moved on from one place to another, and at a very short time, he became known with growing startups, with startup successes. Any startup he's into just gets ready in few years, just gets there, and they're quite successful. So he became known for that. And of course, he in his last words before Hasan's story, he says, looking back, I'm hugely grateful for all of my apparent advantages and disadvantages. Of course, he acknowledged everything that he owned, everything that he has he found on his way to his success. So quickly we'll take Hasan's story. Hasan in his first statement says, how some people are clearly natural or born entrepreneurs? Ash, for example, well, he's not. So Hasan, according to his story, wasn't a born entrepreneur. Wasn't natural entrepreneur. What do we mean by that? It means that from a very young age, he wasn't engaging in businesses, business ideas, or even trying out things like Ash did. Ash, on the other hand, from the age of say 15, 17, was already selling things and already making money. Already understood, the language of money. He loved money. Money loved him. And they couldn't leave each other till now. So Hasan is saying, my own story wasn't like that. He began his with trying out a career path. That was how his own started. And of course, he narrated how he lived a very simple life, especially in those, early years of his, where he lived with his parents. And according to him, my parents encouraged academic ability and took me to the library often as a child. I loved to read. It's important that we read anyways, because books are for those, things that we would ordinarily know. In fact, it makes us travel the world. You travel the world, through the eyes of books. That I believe anyways. And this is what Hasan is also telling us. And according to him, he says, I was on my way to becoming a doctor, fulfilling my parents' dreams. Apparently, his parents want him to become a doctor. However, this serene bubble burst one day when I suddenly dropped out of university only 6 months into my first year, because I had decided I didn't want to be a doctor. So he knew what he wanted and he went for it. He dropped out of school. However, one significant thing that stood out for him was that one day he came across an advert online about learning to start your own online business. And even though so many people thought, oh, why do you want to waste your money on that thing? There is one thing to tell people that you should learn to invest in yourself. If you have to do something online, you have to invest in learning about digital marketing, online marketing, sales, a lot of those things. You have to learn to invest in yourself. Pay for courses, buy books, pay for lectures, for certificates, anything at all that will take you towards achieving your goal faster. Go for it. That was what he did. Long story short, he went ahead to do quite a number of things. one of which was he got a job at a small investment brokerage firm. And he says, rather than the cliched depictions of posh guys in the city, it was full of working class East and South London boys who hadn't gone to university, but who had the gift of the gap to be investment brokers. That was their unfair advantage. They had the skill. So their skill set, their emotional intelligence of knowing what to do at what time, was their own unfair advantage. I hope you've started thinking about your own unfair advantages right now. So, of course, he left that. He did it for a couple of months. He learned what he needed to, learn. However, while he was there, he learned something very significant, something wonderful, something great, which is sales, how to make sales. In his words, sales is a fantastic way to get started if you want to start your own business, because the skills you learn, and in particular the resilience to the rejection and the no's that you develop, are absolutely indispensable. I have actually heard this statement for quite a number of times now. Like, I've heard it over and over again about sales, that if you are into a business, if you're into startup or anything business, if you're an entrepreneur, even as an individual, if you have the skill of making sales, you've made it in this life. I mean, more than half of your problems, is already solved. More than half of it is solved, because you have a great skill than you would even understand. You already know how to talk to people, how to persuade them, how to convince, how to get used to no, because sometimes you talk to 100 people and 90 people will tell you no. So you're already used to no. You're not dejected by it. And the 10 people who tell you yes, you click a deal. And so you're used to it. And because 90 people told you no, you get to evaluate to know, okay, why did they tell me no? And next time you get better. So sales is actually important, and I wouldn't take that for granted. So according to Hasan, he mentioned that it took me 2 years to growth scrap my way to a viable startup that was generating real and significant profits. More about growth scrapping in part 3. Okay, when we get to part 3, we're still in part 1. It wasn't easy. Like I would always tell people, you're not interested in the, how did they say that thing about get rich quick scheme? Like in a month, you just want to have billions in a month. No, it doesn't work that way, my brother. It doesn't work that way. It took him 2 years of learning, relearning, unlearning. There are certain things you think you drop them and pick newer habits, and you get better by the day on the run. You're getting better. You're improving every day. And according to him, there was one thing he said that struck me. I don't know if it is on this page or another, where he said, of course, it got to the point where the only work he was doing was sending invoice. He was just sending invoice to clients, However, he made a point, of course, which I said struck me, the point about he was making money, but he discovered that he needed to get a recurrent revenue. He needed to know how you do digital product and just put it there. And all you need to do is to keep renewing your adverts and keep talking about it here and there. But people keep buying, and you don't have to produce new courses. They're already there, fixed. People just keep watching it. Make a recurrent passive income. I think those were his words. He needed to make a recurrent passive income, and he did it. He went ahead and did it. Okay, I would encourage you to read the entire book. I don't have to go over everything we have in here. According to him, I had the education, the security, the stability of being a native speaker of English, and I had the money to invest in my education, to take an online course, to be able to live at home in an expensive city for the year it took me to get my startup off the ground. This is him also acknowledging his unfair advantage. He even went ahead to say he's got family, he's got friends, he's got healthy connections, He's appreciative of all of the networks that he's supposed to. And those were his unfair advantages. Somewhere along the line in his story, he mentioned how he came across some, I think it's here. He came across some really, poor kids who were supposed to be in school, but they were on the streets begging. And when they met him, one particular one was asking for water. Water. You can imagine. So, yeah, that really struck him. That's okay. He's now gotten to the point where he understood his own unfair advantages, that he didn't have to roam the street. He had fair education, you know, he had great investment in his education. He got that online course. He studied hard. He had the right connections. He had friends. He had families to talk to, and he got where he is today. So, in his final words, he says, "My path has not been one based on innate brilliance or certainty. I've had failures and false starts, and have had to contend with my own self-discipline. But I have watched others with a keen eye, taking every chance to educate myself, observed and analyzed the landscape of startups, and learned from anyone and everyone who has crossed my path. This has been my unfair advantage." You can see. Can you see that? That you're not all alone in your self-discipline journey. How you think, oh, I want to do this, I have to get this done, and then you're failing, you're getting up again. That you're not all alone in your self-discipline journey. How you think, oh, I want to do this, I have to get this done, and then you're failing, you're getting up again, you fail. So it is not in your failure anyways, it's in the getting ups. Really, you fail, you get up again. You're not self-disciplined enough, you create newer habits that will help you work around it. And he's mentioned this. These are his own unfair advantages, the ability for him to learn, unlearn and relearn. And that is what I'll be telling you all today to get used to. Quickly, I want to go through quotes from these chapters. I've highlighted quotes that I want us to run with. Quotes. I hope there are some I have actually mentioned while I got talking, so I might not really go over them again. But others, I might repeat them so it sink in. So right now we'll be going through quotes from the chapters in focus. And the first one here says, "It's not about working harder, it's about working the system." I do hope we get to really understand what that means. Another one here says, "Working hard is overrated." Wow, I believe working smart isn't. We need to really start working smart. Okay, this other quote says, "I loved making a bit of money because for me, cash represented freedom and possibility. I didn't even spend it. I just enjoyed having it and knowing I could afford stuff if I wanted it." That's powerful. That's actually very, very, very powerful. Next one says, "A business is not a business until you get your first customer." Whoa, that's deep. Until you get the first customer who moves from point A to the last point, conversion to money, to profit. Your first customer is not someone who is coming window shopping. No, not someone who is asking questions. No, a lot of people will ask questions, but who is that person who is going to make the payment? Who is going to, make that conversion from just talking, from just trying to gather information about your product to actually paying for it? So this is actually a big one for me. A business is not a business until you get your first customer. Please do not forget that. So I think that is the end of the quote for me today, and I'll stop sharing my screen now. Yo, welcome back, you all. I do hope you enjoyed all of the readings, the recap, the highlights, and the quotes that we got from chapters 1 and 2. The question of the day is, what is your unfair advantage? Because, according to the story, Evan, Ash, and Hasan have told us, we have a glimpse into their lives and into their unfair advantages. So have you started thinking about your own unfair advantages? So the question for today is, what is your unfair advantage? Your call to action for today is that please ensure that you read the allotted pages for all the days. And if you cannot meet up with each day, just ensure that you read up. Just read as much as you can and ensure that you watch all of these videos that we make for the days. Like I always say, there is a giveaway. I have the audio version of this book on Audible. So if you're interested, use the link in the description. So my thought today is that you should focus on your own unfair advantages. Stop looking at other people's unfair advantages. They've got theirs and it's their own to harness. You've got yours. You should look inward, discover yours, and look at how you can harness it towards your own success. Don't look at any other person. Don't look at their own. They have their own. You have yours. Look for it and harness it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for staying through to the end. I super love every one of you. See you next time. Be good.